Today's episode is sponsored by Taylor Health. Taylor Health focus on an integrative approach and specialise in preventative lifestyle factors that can optimise overall health and well-being. From health coaching, looking at lifestyle and behaviours, functional nutrition, meal planning and recipes, phlebotomy services for health screening for a multitude of reasons including health monitoring, fertility testing, pre and post surgical testing, sports and athletic performance testing and hormone monitoring. They also provide therapeutic venesection for individuals with hemochromatosis and those on testosterone replacement therapy. Let Taylor Health prioritise your health and well-being, and be sure to mention the Jim King Show to receive your discount. You can now click on the link in the description of this video for all services. Thank you for everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
I was brought up with my aunt and uncle, and I remember, my uncle leaving the house, so to speak, and my auntie brought in a babysitter. She was going out. Reference in the book is male one. He then became, I guess, a stepfather figure, I suppose. They were known for having aggressive fights, quite violent fights on occasions, but this one in particular. And I remember male one taking my sister, the baby, who is severely disabled, and holding her out the window with her feet. And we were taken into this bedroom, me and my two siblings, and we pretty much lived in that room until we then moved to somewhere else. Not long after moving into that address, male 2 in the book that I refer to moved in with us. At this point, male 2 had been, I suppose, forcing me to do sexual acts on him, back to Scotland and living with my gran. And I was still doing my nursing, and I would get the bus first thing into work and travelling back and forth. Well, I was 17 when I was getting on the bus, but I was just after my 18th birthday when I met him. He would have been, at the time, 31, 14 years older than me. So I had just turned 18. And the next thing, I've hit in the back of the head, and I've went down, and it was the tiled fireplace at the time. And I've obviously hit my head on it. And then it was a few days later, I wakens up on the sofa. So I've been knocked out for this length of time. But when I got the test done, obviously, I then discovered that I was pregnant. And we got the due date in and things like that. And it was over the next few days, I started to do my calculations. And I then discovered, or it was confirmed, more so than discovered, I fell pregnant when I was on that sofa. I fell pregnant when I was knocked out.
The inspirational Georgia Cochrane, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's great to have you on in the studio, Georgia. A very inspirational story, very powerful.
Thank you.
I know you've got your 2 books with you today, but before we dive right into your story, if you can speak me through your books and what they're based on, and obviously the launch and stuff. Okay,
so I always wanted to write for quite a long time. I did think about it and consider it. Then different aspects of life were happening, things were going on, and it was just never the right time. The right time eventually came, and those reasons I'll disclose in my last book when I get to that stage. However, initially I wanted to start the book with the fight that I was having with social housing, around being housed in permanent accommodation and things like that. When the time eventually came for writing, there was a before I had even went on the housing list. Obviously, I couldn't do that until I was 16. So there was a time before that. But at that point, I couldn't write and start disclosing things until I had spoke to some of the children, or all of the children. age and stage related, I then had to give it more time. So it was only 2 and a bit years ago, that I decided that it was the right time. Something did happen, which again, I'm not going to disclose at the moment. And it was the right time for me to start writing. So initially, I took several nights out in the week to commit to the writing and taking the time to do it. It was difficult. It was a difficult journey, reliving from the beginning, I suppose. For the first memory of about age 3, I think that's where I started. That was the first memories that I did have in my life, obviously taking me to eventually that I could go into a housing list at the age of 16. So yeah, it was age and stage related. With my children, I did speak to them, and that's when I decided to start writing. And as I say, it was a long process. The first book, I Never Knew Better, took me the best part of a year to write. It should have been less time, but I had never done anything like this before. I did have my ghostwriter, and she was a great inspiration. She was a fantastic help. She was with me at every stage. We had spoke on several occasions before I started writing, and she was talking me through it. I had told her the story, an insight into it. So there was a kind of process, that we went through initially, and she helped me every step of the way in writing the books. So I would take the 2 nights a week to write and kind of switch off to the world, phones off, etc., and totally mentally go into the story when I was writing. It would take me probably an hour from opening the computer to actually start writing, because mentally I had to put myself in there. Then mentally, after writing, I had to bring myself back out of the story, because I couldn't take this to work the next day. I couldn't overload myself with this. And I think I had put a lot of kind of self-management into writing before I actually done it for my own mental health. I've never ever had any counselling. I've never had any support. I've never had any therapy. I've never had anything like this. So writing the book was self-managed therapy for me. And the way that I conduct writing, the way that after I've published the books, when I do a release, I go somewhere that's significant to me. It's only me that goes. I generally do take a bottle of champagne with me, and I print all the paperwork from the book, and I burn all the paperwork and release it. And that's my closure. And it has been so beneficial mentally, helping me to get through this. So when I close that book, that's it. I'm completely done with that part of my life. I've relived it and I've released it. I've also found myself, when I'm writing, it takes me back to places that are significant within the books, places that I've been moved to, etc. Things have happened. And I've kind of followed my intuition, if you like. And I've went back to these places and I've took a lot of pictures that are really significant. And all of these pictures will again come out in the last book. I'm on book number 3, currently writing. A few things have happened over this year that's kind of pushed it slightly to the side. However, I'm remaining focused again. Hopefully another 4 or 5 months I should get the 3rd book out. After I do the 3rd book, I'm guessing I've got another 4 to write after this. And that will be then the final book, as to where everything, there will be a big twist, a big turn. A lot of things will become evidential in the last book, and all the pictures that I've took on the journey of places of significance will then come into this book.
Well, I know one thing for sure, you like to chat.
Thanks.
So it'll not be a problem for this episode. Very inspiring story.
Thanks.
I'll now take you back to your early memories, age 3, 4, your first chapter.
Yep. So going back, I was brought up with my aunt and uncle, and I remember, my uncle leaving the house, so to speak. obviously the relationship had broke down unawares to me. I was only young at the time. My uncle moved away and my auntie brought in a babysitter. She was going out. Reference in the book is male one. And he then became, I guess, a stepfather figure, I suppose. And my auntie then went into a relationship with him, bearing in mind, I'm only kind of 3, going on 4, things are happening. And she became pregnant, my auntie, obviously to male one. Then I started primary one, and I wasn't long in primary one. And I remember that male one used to brush my hair. He was definitely more delicate, shall we say, than what my auntie was in brushing my hair. I had a lot of hair. And he would often walk me to school. It wasn't that far. Then I remember one day returning from school and I was going upstairs in the house, the bedroom, bathroom, things were upstairs. And I remember seeing 2 legs hanging out of the loft. And I panicked and I'm screaming with these legs. Oh, I can see his legs. I don't know whose legs they are, but I can see legs. And my auntie came to help, and male one then came down from the attic. Now, there was a reason behind that, and again, I'm not going to disclose that until the last book, but that is very significant in the process of what happened moving forward. We were then overnight, literally, me and my sibling told to pack a bag, and we were given a carrier bag of things that we wanted to take with us because we were going on a road trip. And as much as Manty made it sound exciting and, it was great and it was a wee event and things like that, we actually left overnight and we were moved to Coventry, down to relatives' houses. Again, there was all reasoning behind this, but unknown to me. By this time, Manty had had the baby that she had fell pregnant to be male one. And she was actually in hospital. She was actually really, really unwell. But we went via the hospital and lifted the baby from the hospital. And we left for Coventry. I remember, driving all night. We were in the back of this car with covers and things. And it was dark. I remember stopping at a service station and it was really dark and cold. And eventually we did arrive in Coventry. Clearly, now understanding there was kind of like a 5-hour drive or whatever, but, at the time it seemed like forever. And we finally arrived there. Then I got put into school with cousins and I hated this school. I hated it. They spoke funny to me. I'm 5, I'm primary 1. They all had an accent. They didn't understand me, so that was confusing. It was upsetting. It was quite traumatic, I suppose. Male one would often still walk me to school. I presume Manty was obviously busy with the baby. And I hated that walk. I cried and I cried and I dragged my feet and I just didn't want to get to that school. After a period of time, I'm unsure how long, a month or so maybe, male one and my auntie were fighting in my grand's house. And it was an up and downstairs house, but the positioning was kind of different. There was a house underneath and she was in the upper house. And there was a railway out the back. Now, to my understanding at the time, I felt the railway ran right across underneath the window, if you like. But later in life, I discovered there was actually a garden and then it was the railway. However, in my view, I had this railway line, directly under the window. But this fight had broke out in the bedroom and they were known for having aggressive fights, quite violent fights. on occasions, but this one in particular. And I remember meal one, taking my sister, the baby, who is severely disabled, and holding her out the window with her feet. Now she was only tiny, and the baby's screaming, I'm screaming, everyone's screaming, and my grandpa came up the stair to sort the situation out. And I think it was probably the next morning that we left and headed back to Scotland.
Why was he doing that? Holding the baby out the window? It was.
I honestly don't know.
You're only still 5 at this point.
Yeah. I'm young. I just remember, the baby getting held by the feet out the window, and it was horrific. This baby screaming, and I'm thinking that train line's there. If he lets the baby go, the baby's going in front of a train. It was absolutely horrendous, because this was what was running through my head. I'm no visualising the garden and things like that. I'm just visualising this train line.
It's crazy. So assuming you went back up to Glasgow, but age, still 5?
Yeah, still 5, yeah.
Where did you go?
So we took to an area that I didn't really know. It was actually called Druckhill, and we took to some woman's house. Don't know who she was. I believe her name had been Ellie. She will be dead now. We went to her house. There was her and her man. I don't know if it was her husband or her son, but there was just a man there. And we were taken into this bedroom, me and my 2 siblings. And this is where we were then for several weeks. It could have been months, I don't know. I remember a mattress being on the floor, and my auntie and meal one would sleep in the bed. There was a single bed. Often I would get jackets and things to cover us up, because us 3 were sharing the mattress on the floor. The sibling who is quite unwell during the night also needed a lot of taken care of, like to be positionally moved and things like that. So I slept right beside her, and the other sibling was at my feet at the bottom of this mattress. And the other sibling was a bedwetter, so often we were getting flooded during the night. On several occasions, I could hear noises coming from the single beds. Lots of moaning. At the time, I was too young to understand anything. Obviously, it was of a sexual nature, and this was happening right beside us. I remember often kind of squashing the pillow into my ears and trying not to hear it. It sounded aggressive, but I knew it wasn't aggressive, because there wasn't like the same aggressive that I was used to, being shouting and screaming, and I knew it was different. We would be left in the room throughout the day. My auntie would go through and sit in the living room area, and I would be in the bedroom with the 2 younger siblings, and we would get a bowl in the morning, probably porridge at the time, where we would have to share. The baby of the siblings, I had to feed her and things like that, because she couldn't do any of this herself. She was still on bottles as well, actually. And we would get probably mince and potatoes, which was a rotten dinner at dinner time.
So you're just constantly locked in this room?
Yeah, we were in this room. We had to chap the door if we had to go to the toilet. The handle that came through the door on this end wasn't a handle. It was, just a wee stick from the handle. So, we could never ever, we just had to bang on the door to get to use the bathroom and things like that. I wasn't put to school or anything from that house. It could have been summer holidays. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But I know that I wasn't put out to school or anything. And we pretty much lived in that room until we then moved to somewhere else.
How long was that for?
I genuinely don't know. Maybe 2 months, possibly.
What age are you now at this point?
I might be 6, 5/6, right about there.
Where do you move to?
So we then moved to an old man's house, not far from this this lady's house, still within the same kind of area, the same district. and we moved to this older man's house. Now, I don't know these people. I've never ever met them. It's friends of male one that we're going to. For whatever reason, we can't go back into the house we left. So again, this is all unknown to me as to what these reasons are. We then moved to this old man's house, and it was about Christmas time. The old man had a dog, and the dog was very, very protective of my younger sibling. And the old man was lovely. He was really, really nice, and he brought in a bit of a tree for Christmas that we did decorate and made some decorations and things like that for Christmas. Obviously, Christmas arrived. We never really got much. It was like a sweetie or something to that effect. We lived there for a bit longer than the other place. We were still sleeping on a mattress on the floor and on couches and things like this. This man only had one room, so, but you know, it was nice enough of him to put us up. And the dog was very, very attached to my sibling, who is quite unwell still at that point. The dog never ever left their side. You know, this, it was a big white canal Alsatian dog. It was lovely. And man, he then told us that we had been given a house and we were moving. And not long after that, we moved to Drumchapel. And that was our kind of first house from leaving the initial house that I was brought up in with my aunt and uncle. We went there, and I believe I was then getting into primary 2, and the school was up the hill, up quite a big hill. Not long after moving into that address, male 2 in the book that I refer to, who was a sibling of male 1, moved in with us. And at the time, I think he was maybe 16, I want to say, give or take. And he moved in with us. There was no reasoning as to, you know, why he was moving in. There was then, I got to pick my bedroom when we moved in. There was 3 bedrooms in the house, and I did get to pick, being the oldest, I was allowed to pick. But my sibling, the baby, often shared the bed with me anyway, which was fine, just for, again, for positional changes. Man, it never really took much to do with that. It was more me that done it. Male 1 and man, it was continuous fighting or these noises coming from the bedroom. And eventually they did separate. And again, that relationship kind of rolled like that. They, you know, they were in and out of a relationship, back and forth, back and forth. And he did move out for a period of time. And I remember there was scaffolding had been put up outside the house. There was obviously works getting done and workmen up there and things like that. However, one of the ledges was kind of right outside my auntie's bedroom window. And one day coming home from school, I could see workmen, one leaving through the window, one getting in through the window. And obviously on return to the house, I then discovered that there was things going on in the room. I could hear noises, again of sexual nature, coming from the bedroom. This went on day in, day out. The workmen weren't there on a Sunday, but they were there on a Saturday. School was off. I could hear it happening. And this was for weeks and weeks, this went on. Then, man, he met someone else, and he was very quickly moved in to live with us. Male 2 was still living with us, although male 1 was away. And this new partner would often send me out first thing in the morning, send us all out. And we weren't allowed to come back until it was dinner time. And often I would take my sibling round to the shop. The other sibling would just go and play. And I would take this sibling to the shop, and we would buy the wee packets of cereal and a carton of milk. and I would go back round. In the mornings it was kind of chilly, waiting in the sun coming out and stuff. So we often would sit in the close and I would feed him in the close, and we would then wait for friends to kind of come out, and we would go out and play and things like that. If it was ever raining or cold or too cold, we generally spent the day in the close or somebody else's close if it wasn't our close. If occasionally when I did approach the door within the times that I wasn't supposed to be there, the door would be answered probably by the male that was in the house, and maybe I was allowed in for the bathroom, but we would always be ushered back out. I do remember on an occasion where I interrupted that they were in a bath together, and that kind of freaked me out. I felt that was quite disgusting. I'm only 6, 7. These two are getting in a bath. Who does that? Do you know what I mean? So I didn't understand the whole thing about it at the time. I was still too young. Male 1 would come back and life just kind of progressed like that. One day I found something under the couch. I didn't know what the something was, and it vibrated and it made noises, and I think there was a light on it. And I remember taking it out into the street and showing it to my friends. And my auntie had clearly seen me from the window. And she came down and got me by the hair and trailed me back up the stair. And she explained that it was her special torch. And basically she was going to teach me some sex education because she felt that was appropriate. And I was made sit on the sofa in front of the TV, and a porno was put on. And these are the noises I've been hearing. This is what's been coming for this room. This is what's been going on. Workmen in and out the window, male 1, this new guy. This is what's been going on. So it all made sense as to what was happening in that bedroom at the time. I remember crying. I remember I would drop my head down and, I didn't want to watch this. This was absolutely disgusting. This was horrific. And every time I would drop my head down, she would get me by the hair and pull me back up and make me watch this. Even trying to sit with my eyes closed, and she wouldn't allow it. I was to watch it.
What age are you, only 7?
7, yeah, 7. And male 1 then eventually came back. The relationship with this other guy had clearly broke down. Male 1 then did come back, and at this point, male 2 had been, I suppose, forcing me to do sexual acts on him. And often I would get trailed into the bathroom, or he would come into the bedroom at night and he was making me perform sexual acts on him. And I think a lot of the time when he would approach me in the bedroom, I was sleeping beside the younger sibling, that was a nightly occurrence. And I believe I was trying to protect her as well, because I can't say if anything ever did happen with them. I genuinely can't. I hope it didn't. But I think I kind of put myself forward. But there was a part of me felt that he wanted to care for me. He wanted to look after me. Because nobody else had done that. So, was that an act of love? Was it? That's what I'm thinking at this point. He actually likes me. So along with all the other ongoings of workmen coming in and out, sexual noises coming for this bedroom, I'm now being made perform stuff on him.
You're still only 7 at this point?
Yeah. I mean, this went on for a good 2 year probably. Yeah, a good 2 year. It was a daily occurrence. And eventually he did get a girlfriend, and I kind of thought, this is good. I don't need to do these things now. He's got a girlfriend.
I know there's a story in the book. You also told me about it.
Mm-hmm.
you were only about 7 or 8, you walks into the living room.
Yeah. So one night, probably just going in to get a drink or something. We were in bed, me and my siblings, and male 2 has now got a girlfriend, and there's probably about 8 people in the living room, mostly couples, different friends and things had come up. And we were told to, we're having an adults' night, you stay in your room. To access the kitchen, you had to go through the living room. And I was going to get a drink for us, and I had approached the living room. I didn't think to chap the door, or, why would I? So I just walked in. And I can see there's every couple is all sitting together. There's 2 chairs with 2 people on each of them. And then the sofa where there was 4 or 6 people, like 2 or 3 couples. And this movie is on the TV. It wasn't overly loud, but I seen it. And I remember getting shouted at to get back out. But they were actually all having sexual intercourse in the living room in front of each other with this on. So technically, yeah, they were having an orgy in the living room. We're in the next room. So I did leave. I was obviously mortified, and I left the room, and I never got the drink, and took back to my bedroom. Then, wasn't long after that, maybe it could have been the next day actually, where we all got took swimming, and I think this was to cover up what had happened the previous night. And we were in the pool. There was lots of us had went, including some of the couples from the night before. And we were in the swimming, and I approached male 2, who had been making me perform sexual activities on him, and certainly making me relieve him at every time, and I was on several occurrences made to swallow stuff and things like that, because there was nowhere else to hide it. So it was easier. And I approached him in the swimming pool, and I asked him, or I guess I told him that this had to stop. He's got a girlfriend now, and that's it. And if it didn't stop, I was going to the police. And I genuinely don't know where I plucked up the courage to say this to him. I don't know where it came from. And he drowned me. Right under the water I went. Head on my hand, right under. I remember it as though it was yesterday. I could see bright light. It was horrific. Clearly I passed out. And I remember kind of waking up, coughing, choking, spluttering at the side of the pool. And it was made out to everyone that it was just basically an accident. I had drowned, basically. It was nothing to do with him putting his head on my hand. I remember it as though it was yesterday. So much so that I am petrified of the water. Like, it's unbelievable. I can't even handle a shower going on my face. It's so terrifying. Then we were walking home, and I was trailing behind, and they're laughing at me and telling me to hurry up. And I remember, scuffing my feet, and I'm thinking, I can't keep doing this. This needs to stop. Moving on from there, it did stop. It definitely did stop. He used to call me a name. I'm not disclosing the name, and I won't disclose the name until my last book, because this name is evidential on what he was calling me. And through a conversation maybe 7 years ago with my partner, it wasn't until I had walked away after telling him that he pointed out why this name was getting called to me. And I never knew. So obviously it's something on my back, and I never knew until he pointed it out. So that I was traumatised like 7 years ago, because I thought, wow, this is my body. I didn't know that was there. It was very interesting.
Was he between that age? You're around about age 8 then?
Uh-huh.
From age 8 up to 11 before high school?
Mm-hmm.
Did Did you say the abuse totally stopped?
That stopped, yeah, that absolutely stopped. And he was then kind of obviously wrapped up with this partner, and he kind of moved out then to be with her. They kind of moved in at their own place and things like that. Then there was another occasion of where, again, there was relatives in the house and things like that. And now, bearing in mind this sibling, she is really, really ill, spending a lot of time in and out of the hospital and things like that, really, really ill. And this night there was relatives up visiting, and there was a cousin there and we were playing in the room and things like that. And something had kicked off, something really, really serious. And I remember coming out of the room to see what was going on. I can hear the commotion. Male one has left via a window. And bearing in mind we're one up in this close. He's left via a window, and my auntie is sitting at the front door with the baby in her arms, feet pressed against the wall. And there's two men trying to get in the door. They've got shotguns. They're trying to get in the door. They're actually shooting at the door. She's behind the door with the baby. And I'm screaming. I'm trying to get the baby off her, but she wouldn't. She just kept holding the baby. I don't remember much of how we got out of that situation. I think the relative that was visiting, the male, intervened, and we get moved out the house. Like overnight, literally moved. Several weeks later, we did go back to the house, and we were taken in. Their family was all bikers, and we were taken in behind a convoy of bikers, and the police were behind us, so they didn't approach the street first. It was all the bikers. And these neighbours who had came to the door with shotguns had been severely warned not to come back near the door. And we were then allowed to again stay in that street. I don't know what it was about. I was too young. Obviously, nothing was explained to me. I still don't know the reasoning behind in that. Then, maybe 8 months or so later, we changed address, and I changed school and things like that. I was bullied in the first school off a boy. His name was David, and we had dinner tickets at the time, and he used to take my dinner ticket, and so he would go for 2 lunches, so I never got lunch, and I just had to. That did eventually stop after I stood up to him one day. We had a fight in the playground, and I think I get the better of him, actually.
I was going to say, I wouldn't like to spar with you, Georgia.
And I got my dinner ticket back, so that was good. So I started getting lunches again. So yeah, that was quite
Moving
good.
on for there, right up to age 11, into high school.
Age 11, so again, we've moved house, we've moved into, well, before that had happened, when we'd moved to the second house, we were there, and again, there was still all the fighting going on in the house. This was almost a daily occurrence with these two fighting, male one and Manty. And every time a fight would break out, I would jump, and I would be protecting the baby, and I would be trying to get out the house, etc., etc. And one night, we were all upstairs, and male 2 had came to visit with his now partner, and who I was fairly close to be fair. I did go on, we're good. And we were upstairs, me and the siblings, and the next thing I heard glass smashing, and I ran down to see what was happening. And the girlfriend had been put out the house. But if you remember the kind of metal framed windows where it was all the wee squares, and as I had approached the living room, of course her 2 hands have come through the glass, and she's trying to get male 1 who was sitting at the window, whatever this fight was about. And I opened the door, the front door, to get her in. I've got a white nightdress on right down to my ankles, pure white. And I get her in, and they're shouting at me, no to let her in. I can see she's bleeding, she needs help. And I'm only 10, I think, round about that. And I get her into the bathroom, and she's actually severed main arteries. I didn't know this at the time. And I remember, getting toilet roll and stuff like this, and I'm trying to dry her up, and I hears a voice at the door, and I think it was the police telling me, stand back to the door, stand back to the door. And the next thing, the door came in. There was paramedics there, and by this time she's passed out, and they takes her away. Paramedics obviously intervened and seen her, and I don't know what happened from there. Then we were eventually given another house, which was specially adapted then for the sibling. And we moved there, and I then started high school. And my auntie she was working, like, it was deliveries for some company, kind of Monday to Friday, 9 till 5 or something like that. Male one was also doing a job in the evening, doing deliveries for a local takeaway shop. Anyway, this day I had come down from school. It was kind of summer months, and my last class that day was PE. So I just came home. It was kind of hot pants. I had on long socks, Airtex t-shirt, and I came home, and it was only him and I that was in the house. And I'm 11 at this point, and we were. I don't know why I had went into the room, but I was in the room. He was in the bed, not sleeping, but trying to have a sleep before he had went to work. And my auntie was still working. She wasn't in yet. I presume my sibling was probably out playing, and I don't know where my other sibling was, probably still at school. She was now at school, and it was a taxi took her back and forth at this time. And we started dummy fighting. That was quite a occurrence that happened quite regularly, to be fair. We would have all this dummy fighting thing. So, we're carrying on, we're having this dummy fighting, and the twos are kind of rolling about the bed. So after it, we're fairly exhausted, and we've kind of lay down on the bed, and he's behind me and I'm lying in front of him. And I was genuinely starting to doze, and as I thought he was, and the next thing, he's pulling my shorts down, pulling my pants down, and he penetrated me. And I froze. And I'm sure there was tears, and I was terrified. I was absolutely petrified. I don't know how long it lasted. It was sore. And I think it was a few minutes, I don't know. We then heard my auntie's car coming in, and I'm still kidding on, I'm sleeping. I'm kidding on, I'm sleeping through this whole thing. And I'm so tense, my eyes are tight shut. And obviously he heard her car, and he kind of quickly pulls my pants and my shorts back up. And they weren't upright, they weren't proper, they were up. And he jumps out the bed. And I heard him going downstairs. We did have a top bathroom. Sorry.
You're fine. Just take your time.
I jumps out the bed and goes into the bathroom, and I was bleeding. And I sat there for quite a wee bit, I think. And eventually just kind of retired off to my room and kept myself up the stair out the road, and then he left for work and things, and the next day or two I just had to act as though things were normal. In fact, that had fell on a weekend actually, and I get back in at the school on the Monday, and I told my friend, and she suggested calling someone for help, who can we call? And at lunchtime we left school and we walked down at the bottom of the road where there was a phone box, and I called my uncle. He was in the country at my gran's, and I called him. I knew he was there, and I called him, and he had at this point had met his new partner, early stages of dating and things. She's not from here, she's American, and he was showing her parts of the country. They were up here to visit, and I called him, and I had said, I need to speak to you. I need to tell you something. And he basically said he was too busy and he was taking his now partner around about Scotland to show her different sites. Basically, I had to wait a few days until he had time to speak to me. And I came off the phone and there was a sticker. You remember all these stickers on the phone boxes, and it was Childline, and I called it. And the next thing, they had somebody, whoever I spoke to on the phone, it was a lady. She sent a taxi for me. She told me what colour this was going to be and the registration number, etc., etc. And my friend walked back up to school, and this taxi took me to the social work department. And I went in there, and clearly there was obviously police officers not there. They were plain dressed, and I remember sitting speaking to loads of people. But for them to take me to the hospital and stuff, they had to involve my auntie, I suppose, who had been my guardian. And that was done. Male 1 was removed from the house. I don't know where he was removed to. But they assured me that he wasn't allowed to come back to the house, and I get took to the hospital. And they asked me, where the clothes were that I took off and stuff like that. I believe they went back and got the clothes. Although I believe they had been washed as it had been over the weekend. The doctors had to do loads of investigations, taking swabs, things. It was absolutely horrific. I was going through all this again, do you know what I mean? All these people in this room. And
What age are you again?
11. It was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. So, back to the house, and male 1's not there. I feel quite relaxed, I feel quite safe. And maybe about 5 days or so had passed. And my auntie sat me down in the bottom 2 stairs in the hall and explained to me that he could go to prison for this. This was serious. But if he ended up going to prison, my sibling, it's her dad's, that she would be so upset that it would actually kill her if he went to prison. So it would probably be better, if this didn't happen, if basically, if I told the police that I had made up a story, if I'd told a lie. And I suppose I was forced to do that in a roundabout way. I was manipulated. And I had to change my story. Everything was dropped. He came back. I presume because they never really found evidence. The clothes were washed.
Back to the same routine then?
That was it.
So see, between age 11 and 16, did the abuse continue?
No. He never ever done anything again. And I had to live my life as being a lie. But male members of the family, or male friends, or my friends' dads, things like that changed. Now looking back, clearly I understand it, but being then and living a lie, and I knew this was a lie because I knew this had happened. This happened to me. The blood was there, but clearly in the washing it disappeared. This happened. But I had to live a lie that I had made up a story, supposedly. So adult males were then scared to have me in their presence. I'd already said this. What happens if I said it about them? I get it. They were scared. I totally get it. But that then affected my friendships with people. My friends, their dads, other uncles, things like that. I wasn't allowed to stay over in people's houses. All that kind of stopped because of this allegation that I had made. But the allegation was the truth. School teachers never even picked up on it. I did become quite withdrawn in school after it. I remember being quite withdrawn. I remember no participating much in PE and things like that, because I just didn't want to put that PE kit on again. I didn't want to expose myself again. And nobody ever got that. Why was these people who had a duty of care, have still got a duty of care, nobody noticed? And life just continued.
But it's inspirational that you can now speak about these things, because there's so many girls, women,
it's frightening,
that are suffered at the hands of these monsters.
Yep.
And they've never been able to speak about it. They've been told to hide it.
I think teachers need to be more educated on it. Know that they've got time. They really don't have time, and that's not their kind of speciality. I think it needs to be highlighted a lot more in schools.
To pick up on the signs.
Yeah.
Because there's so many victims out there.
There is.
And that's why I'm saying it's inspirational for yourself. Obviously, you're coming on, you're talking about your books.
Yep.
It's going to open doors for people that are watching. It
definitely is.
To say, do you know what, I want to speak up now.
Yeah. And I hope they do, because it's difficult reliving it. Oh, Jesus, it's hard. But it's a weight lifted off your shoulders.
With the audience watching, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That will hopefully give them a voice and
hopefully
free them as well, because it's liberating.
It definitely is.
You're letting go of it.
You've got to carry this for the rest of your life. The rest of your life, it never goes away. It affects future relationships. It affects relationships even with your children. The way you are as a parent, the way you manage and watch them, protecting them.
Or even meeting new individuals, trust, or these things you don't know. Because for that to happen to you from age 3, right through your childhood, I know it's a part of your book there, a stolen childhood, because it's such a powerful message you're sending out. And don't get me emotional before I start breaking down again.
I'm not.
But we're moving on, right? So I know, and tell me if I'm missing out here, right? But I know when you were 16, it all changed then, because you moved to America.
Went for bad to worse. That takes me into my second book of Now I Know Better.
But you're 16.
So 16, and I literally was packing bags and things before it. I went to, it was all planned to go to my gran's. She was definitely my rock. And, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Your wee gran, whereabouts in America?
No, she was here. My gran was here, yeah. And I went to my gran's initially. The plan was to go to hers, and I had started taking clothes on a lengthy bus journey and, things like that to her house before my 16th birthday. And the plan was that I was going to hers kind of overnight. The next morning we were travelling on a train to London to my uncle's house, which is her son. And within a day or two I was going to America. And my friend, my partner in crime, shall we say, she was helping me to move my clothes and things. And we stood in Buchanan bus station and it had her tears and things like that. And she left, she went home, and I headed off to my gran's, because we knew what the plan was. So technically I ran away. It wasn't until probably my second day in London, so I've now been away for the house 4 days, I think. And my auntie then made contact with my uncle, and I don't really remember much of what was said, to be honest with you. I didn't speak to her, but I know she had called. I presume my uncle had told her what was happening, and that was it, and off I went to America.
Whereabouts?
I went to California, and I was going to live with my uncle's new partner, the one that he couldn't come and see me because he was showing her about. I went to live with her daughters in America.
Whereabouts in California, do you remember?
Yeah, it was in a place called Glendora in Orange County.
Right. So I've done a bit of travelling around there.
Have you? Right, okay. Yeah, Orange County. So just down for the Glendora Mountains. And I went there for several months.
Down in the desert there, is it not?
No, it's quite in the city, that part. We did go to the desert though.
Right.
We did go out there on a couple of occasions. With one year, so I lived with one daughter and I went with the other daughter because the daughter that I was living with, she had two younger kids as well, and I would help her with bringing them up. She was at college, her man was working, and like doing dinners and looking after.
How
the
long
kids
were you
and
there
things
for?
like that. I think in total it must have been 4 months, maybe. Yeah, about 3-4 months I was out there. I had on the flight, so, I'd never been on a plane. That was my first time on a plane, so it was quite nerve-wracking. And I remember this guy beside me, and he'd ordered a Bloody Mary. I've still never tasted one. And he was opening this Bloody Mary, and it was tomato juice. Did they knock it all over me? I was covered. Absolutely covered in this tomato juice for the rest of the flight. But I remember feeling a bit, I don't know, I suppose I was a wee bit lightheaded, I think. And I said to the stewardess, we were only maybe an hour into the trip, an hour and a half after the tomato juice, and she moved me into first class. It was great. First class flight, free of charge. So that was me all the way to America. And I remember landing at, as the flight was kind of descending into Los Angeles, and I'm thinking, this is it. This is the start of my new life. I'm free for this. That's it. It's done. Nobody can ever touch me. This is me. A new life, a new start, a new beginning. Boy, was I so wrong. I was so wrong. And off to America I went. Yeah, I had an all right time. I remember her daughter, there was 2 dogs in the house, and the daughter would be playing with the dogs with the hoover and things like that. And one of the times I joined in and I was playing with the dogs with the hoover, and the dogs would be barking at the hoover and things like that. Never ever anything aggressive, just carrying on with the dogs, I suppose. And that incident was actually used against me several months later. They had contacted my gran, basically saying that I had been abusing this dog, which I wasn't doing. Looking back, it was ironic as to why she recorded me doing it and not her. So clearly there was an incentive there, and I just never seen it. Anyway, we got over that several months later when I was accused of tormenting this dog, which I hadn't been. I did take it quite personal, I think, because it had upset my gran, and she was upset about it because she knew that I wasn't that type of person. If anything, I was more caring and would be looking after people as opposed to tormenting a dog. If she thought that of me doing that to a dog, why did she leave me with her children? So the question bears to be answered. I've never had the result, but
You were only there a few months then?
yeah, a few months.
And back again?
Then I came back, and before I had went, I was taken out of school early and put into college. I was too advanced in my education, and I was put into college. And at the time, we'd done a work placement for a week, and I had went into a nursing home because that's what I wanted to do, was nursing. And I was placed in the college, and the nursing home, they actually kept me on when I went to the college, so I would work there part-time, and I was at college, but I was going through my nursing early, couldn't go through things until I was of age, obviously, insurance purposes and things like that. Even night shift, I couldn't do any of that. So when I came back from America, I was then back to Scotland and living with my gran, and I was still doing my nursing, and I would get the bus first thing into work and travelling back and forth, and doing that. I worked a lot with agency and doing bank as well.
What, are you about 16, 17 at this time?
So I I've been about 17 probably, yeah, but 17 at
You
this
were
point.
saying there you're getting the bus into
Yeah,
work.
yeah, because I wasn't driving at this
So
point.
I know in the book this is where you met your partner.
Yes.
You
So
were only
that's
17 getting on the bus.
well, I was 17 when I was getting on the bus, but I was just after my 18th birthday when I met him. So I had been like travelling on the bus all this
So
length
he
of
was a
time.
bus driver.
He was a bus driver, yeah.
What age was he?
He would have been, at the time, he would have been 31, 14 years older than me. So I'd just turned 18.
Right. How did that start? Was it quite a good relationship to start
Yeah,
with?
it was nice. It was, to be fair, he was actually quite attractive. And I was always quite mature for my age. Having clearly came through what I'd came through and experienced in life, it was, yeah, I was quite mature. And it was house phones at the time, so, I'd give him my number and stuff. And obviously he drove, and he also had a car. And he called, and then he came and picked me up, and we never actually went out on a date. We only had went back to his, which was the next town along, maybe a 10-minute drive. And I remember telling my gran all about him. I don't think I mentioned his age at that point. And I never introduced her. She did look out the door to see me get into the car and stuff, but, I didn't introduce at that stage. And we went back to his, and he was quite suggestive, as in, getting a takeaway and having a couple of drinks. But I didn't really drink at the time. I didn't drink. I think I maybe sat with a bottle of beer, I want to say. And I think that lasted me like the whole night, and I'd only drank half of it anyway. I did stay over. Then the next morning, he did drop me back off as he was going to work. And then things very quickly progressed from there. It must have moved into a sexual nature after a week, I want to say, probably. And when I say into a sexual nature, it became very aggressive. Very aggressive.
Very quickly?
Very quick. He was older than me.
How dark did it get?
Very dark. He was, in the beginning, he did make open chat, I suppose, in regards to sexy underwear, stockings, suspenders, etc. I never owned any. I definitely never. I don't even think I would have known where to have bought it, to be honest with you. And he was very quick into using objects and things right away. Gave me the fear. But I was quite wrapped up in him. And his mum had died. She had died maybe 2 years before I had met him. And he was the baby of the family. And I think he was quite cut up with us. He shared the house with his mum. And when she died, I think it was quite a big loss for him, to be fair. And there was, many... This is progressing quickly, but he's drinking almost every night. But initially, it was a release from work. It was to help wind down so that he could sleep. It was a day off. There was always an excuse to be sitting having a drink.
Are you together all the time now after?
Yeah, I'm working, he's working, but out with that, I'm there. I'm there. I've not officially moved in, but I've certainly not been home. Back to my gran's. I'm talking to her on a daily basis. We've got house phones. I'm speaking to her daily and things like that. But just due to work commitments and timings, obviously travelling on the bus, etc., because I didn't drive. it was a wee bit more awkward to go and see my gran. So this was moving very, very fast. I was really becoming wrapped up in him, really falling for him. And I do remember on several occasions, he would trail me out at stupid o'clock in the morning to go and visit this grave, which more or less his back garden faced onto the graveyard. And many a night, we would be going down to this grave. Some nights he would get slightly aggressive verbally, but they would then turn it into kind of emotional and be heading off down into the grave. And it would either be I would be going with him or I'd be going to entice him to come back up to the house. And then one night we had came back for the grave. It was snowing and he wanted us to have sex in the garden. There was neighbours and I did. I remember that night so well. He'd fell in the front door. He was holding on to me, kind of pulled me down onto the floor in the hall. The doors open, we're still at the front door. And he's telling me how much he loves me, and if I really loved him, that I would do this. I would go and have sex with him in the garden, and I did. And then we got up and came back into the house, and I went for a hot shower and stuff like that, trying to get a heat into me. I hated every minute of it. I absolutely hated every minute. Thankfully, it was over way quick.
I know it just escalates then. It starts getting worse and worse. You're only still 18 at the point.
Yeah, still 18.
It's an instant there. I'm sure he hits you with a phone as well.
So, yeah, well, before the phone incident, he had, again, suggestively using objects and sex. You know, that this sex was constant. It was absolutely constant. And this night he decided to use a cucumber, and he's drunk, and it wasn't a full cucumber, but anyway, nevertheless, he's lost it inside me. And I'm lying there and I'm thinking, what the fuck? But he still has to come. He still has to finish off. This is inside me. He rolls over, he's fallen asleep, he's drunk. Tears are rolling down my face. I get into a bath and I kept running the hot water. The bath was scalding, obviously to allow my body to adjust to the temperature. But I'm trying to melt this. I'm trying to push it out. I've never had to push it in my life. And I'm thinking, I can't go to the hospital. There's not a chance I can go to this hospital. I must have spent about 5 hours in that bath that night. And I'm pushing and pushing. Eventually, I did manage to get it out of me. And I was in agony. Obviously, as you can imagine, a lot of poking and prodding and whatever, trying to remove this. I did eventually get it out. And I came out the bath and stood with the towel just wrapped right round me. To this day, that's a big comfort thing for me. And I stood there in tears. I think I slept an hour that night, if you're lucky. And, you know, he gets up in the morning and he's not even asked. I don't think he remembered. If he knew that this had happened the night before. So that was fine, and we still carried on, and he would tell me that he loved me, and I genuinely think he did, in his own weird way. And we had made plans to move to Tenerife, and this was a big kind of dream of his. I was going to go and hopefully get a job in the hospitals. He was going to drive buses over there. And we were getting ready to go. It was coming up for Christmas. We were leaving in the January. And definitely into December. And this night we had came back from his sister's and he was on the phone. The phone was in the kitchen. He was talking to his friend on the phone, and as I had passed by, I heard his friend calling me a cow, and I spoke back to him and I said, well, you're not calling me a cow, you've slept with me and you'll never sleep with me. And I walked on by thinking, you should be sticking up for me. And the next thing I've hit in the back of the head, I think it was the phone. I don't know, I presume it was the phone. And I've went down and it was the tiled fireplace at the time. And I've obviously hit my head on it, unawares, because I've been knocked out. And then it was a few days later, I wakens up on the sofa. So I've been knocked out for this length of time. I've urinated myself, you name it. And there was blood on my forehead or in my hair. And I went for a bath, and I'm thinking at this point that this was 5 minutes ago. But it wasn't until I started to piece things together that it was actually 2 days that I was out for it. He had moved me from the floor to the sofa and continued drinking. I think he'd drank for 2 days. And that wouldn't be unusual for him. Anyway, he makes amends and kind of covers it all up and everything's fine and this is all happening. He makes back in and we leased his flat out for 6 months. We drew into a contract for 6 months and we headed off to Tenerife. Very quickly I started to take unwell. The sex is all still happening. We're in this tower block. We're in the top floor of this tower block, which faces down onto a nightclub. He's frequenting the nightclub daily, nightly. Every night this is happening. But when he leaves, I'm locked in to the apartment. And he's away to the nightclub.
So you're locked in there every night?
Every night. I'm in the apartment. And I can see him when he's coming out of the nightclub. I can see him with all sorts of women. I'm stood on the balcony watching. I can see this happening. Disappearing round onto the beach with him. Whatever he's getting up to. Some nights he would come in, some nights he wouldn't come in. He wouldn't come in maybe the next day. Maybe he's lying down at the pool sleeping. All these crazy things. When he would come in, there was a lot of aggression. I would be upset and emotional because, I've seen him with X, Y and Z. I've stood there and witnessed it. Apparently I'm lying. Apparently I'm making it up. Things do get quite violent, quite heated on several occasions. I've nowhere to go. Absolutely nowhere. When we had booked the flights, we had booked a return flight for like 2 weeks later. Apparently this is what you done and you just didn't turn up for your flight. And that was the plan that we were doing. We had leased this place over there for 6 months as well. We tied into that. And I just so happened to mention in this cafe one day, we were talking to somebody, he did know them. And I says, she was asking, why do you never come out? I said, I've really, all I'm doing is sleeping and being sick. I don't know what's up with me. And she says, maybe you're pregnant. And I thought, oh, actually could be. So obviously we had the language barrier. And then, I'm getting back nearly 30 years. Like, you didn't have Google Translate. Their English wasn't that good then as to what it is now. I'm trying to explain a pregnancy test. Baby signs, the lot. Nobody knew what I was talking about. And I thought, I'm going to take the flight back and get a test. So I spoke to him about it. And he was angry and he considered not coming back with me, which I felt a bit relieved about, to be fair, although I was emotional. Anyway, he did come back and the twos came back on the flight. And maybe 2 nights later, the clinic was open, and that's where you went to get pregnancy tests done. And off I went. We had to stay with my gran because we didn't have anywhere to go. So the plan was we were going to go back out to Tenerife after I had got this test done. But when I got the test done, obviously, I then discovered that I was pregnant. I was happy, I was sad, I was emotional, I was mixed up, it was a strange sensation.
You still 18?
Yeah, 18 at the time. Mm-hmm. And needless to say, it was a need for a celebration, so off he goes to the pub. And I never went. I went back up the road and had a bath and gathered my thoughts, I suppose.
How many weeks pregnant were you?
Well, at this point, I didn't know. And I knew that something didn't feel right. I knew something didn't feel right. But as I move later on and we start to get, obviously going through the pregnancy and you're going for different tests and stuff like that. And eventually it was my scan, which can then predict your dates, etc. And we got the due date in and things like that. And it was over the next few days I started to do my calculations. And I then discovered, or it was confirmed, more so than discovered, I fell pregnant when I was on that sofa. I fell pregnant when I was knocked out.
See, when you told me that, so you were there for 2 days. So he's been raping you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You've been
this was happening all the time. I never seen it as rape. I seen it as normal. I seen it as normal behaviour coming from somebody that loved me, because that was all I knew. I never knew anything else.
It's the title of your book, innit? I never knew better. Because you suffered like that through your whole childhood into adulthood now.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrendous.
And I don't regret any of my children by any means. But enforceably, this is where I fell pregnant. At every cost. To the extent of that cost being, there had to have been at least 10 pregnancies. Some were terminations and some were miscarriages through to the abuse that I was suffering. This information will all come out in further books, but it's trauma that to this day I still need to live with. The decisions weren't made easy when I had to make them, and I had to make them on my own. I had to do these things on my own, and even going through what I had to go through in regards to a miscarriage, in regards to a termination, and I know these are touchy subjects for a lot of people, they were difficult times and decisions that I had to make. Certainly not proud of having had made them, but I definitely do not regret any of the children that I've got, irrelevant of how that pregnancy became at the time. And yeah, it was rape.
Such a powerful story you've got here, Georgia. We've not even scraped the surface.
No.
We could sit here for hours and hours.
We could.
Very inspiring
it's gonna take hours.
For you to sit here and speak about this, but we'll go into your books now, right?
Okay.
Because this episode's really covered book 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so if you can talk us through where your books are available.
So the books are available on Amazon, and under both the names of the book, well, I Never Knew Better, you will find the Facebook links, Instagram, and both of them are now available on the Amazon sites.
Brilliant. We'll plug that for you.
Thank you.
Also, before we finish up on this episode, if you have another great message that you can send out.
A great messages, yeah, definitely. And I've touching on women, children. If children are allowed to access your sites, I'm unaware of that. We know they can get access to whatever they want nowadays on social media, let's be honest. Children, women, even men, there is a selective few men that have read my book and I've listened to their story as well, and that was quite an eye-opener, to be honest, of where there has been a lot of trigger points for them as well, which was quite interesting. So it's not solely to women. This can affect everyone, any sex, any nature. This can affect them. So it's not targeted at anyone. However, if you've suffered any of this abuse, any of it, because it is abuse, that is what it is, please either speak about it or write it. Writing has been such a help for me. Even if you don't publish, write it, because it's releasing it and it's getting the trauma out, and it does help.
Powerful message, Georgia.
Thank you.
Very inspirational woman.
Thanks.
It's an honour having you in the studio. I know
I've been here.
We're now friends now.
Yes, very much
and
so.
I'd like to promote your books as much as I can.
Thank you.
And I will say to people, as I said earlier, we've not even touched the story yet.
No, we've
so
not.
book 1 and book 2, and I know you're working on book 3. So
Yes.
But well done again, Georgia.
Thank you.
An absolute honour. Shake my hand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I wish you well
for
for the
having me.
future.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.